Okay, it being 6:30, I'll call the meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education to order. It's Monday, January 28th, and we're at the Oregon School District's Innovation Center at the high school. Mrs. Wick, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Feeney? Present. Ms. Odorico? Here.
Present. Board has a quorum. Do you have the proof of notice? I do not have it here.
No, it was part of the policy. You saw it.
You saw it? Okay.
I thought I put one at your place.
All right, I have proof that this meeting has been appropriately noticed pursuant to Wisconsin Open Meetings Law. That notice will be with Ms. Wick if anyone wants to examine it. Our agenda tonight is short. We have a couple action items. One is open enrollment spaces, and then approval of our 2017-2018 transportation conditions of payment, and then a couple just short information items. I need a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Flanagan with the motion, Mr. Kraus with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda to follow this evening. Item A of the agenda is consent calendar. Is there any item that any board member wishes to have removed? Mr. Raymond. Mr. Raymond will vote, except will be abstaining on the minutes, and if you would note that on the minutes. Anyone else have anything else they want to remove? Seeing none, I'd need a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Mr. LeBrun with the motion, Mr. Raymond with the second. Is there all those in favor? We don't have any contracts or policies or resignations, so we can do that by voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries with the exception of the abstention on the minutes by Mr. Raymond. Item B, communication from the public. Board Policy 18004 affords the community members an opportunity to speak to the board. Has there any member been registered with you, Ms. Wick?
No.
And I don't see anybody in the audience, so we'll move on. Item C, information items, OEA report, and I do not see anyone from the OEA. Student report. Hi, Ellen. We have Ellen Martin as our new student representative, and this is your chance to tell us a little bit about yourself, Ellen. Yep, you hit that little thing, and I'm going to turn.
Hi, I'm Ellen Martin. I'm a senior at Oregon High School. I plan on attending either Madison or Milwaukee next year to study elementary education and double major with Spanish.
And what kind of extracurricular activities have you been involved in?
Throughout my 4 years, I've been involved in a lot of things, including student council, which Carol and I are the co-presidents of currently. SALT, which is kind of a group that does random acts of kindness and goes to elementary schools, kind of goes to like their pop groups or their PAWS groups. I'm in NHS. I've managed the boys swim team the past 2 years. Oh man. I've been participating in swimming all 4 years, soccer for a few, and yeah, that's about it.
Great. We're excited to have you here for the second semester. We're going to have a couple big decisions to make second semester involved in. One is the student growth task force is going to be reporting back, and so we'll probably bring you into the information loop with that and probably ask for some feedback on some of the options that are available to us. So Ellen and I are going to meet for coffee at the Firefly and get up to speed a little bit and bring you on board with some of the projects so that we get some feedback from you. Anybody else have any words of wisdom for Ellen before we proceed? Thanks. Okay. And Carolyn's coming tonight, right, at some point? Oh, that's right. She did tell us that. Good. Takes us to action items D1, open enrollment spaces, and that is Gina.
Okay, thank you. So if you will remember, by statute in January, we have to set the spaces that we have available for students who are open enrolled. By law, once we set the spaces, we cannot decrease them. However, in June, as we monitor resident growth and applications, we can increase spaces in June, and we have done that on a few occasions. So in looking at the open enrollment report, one thing I do want to stress with everyone is that we look at open enrollment based on our resident growth and the capacity that we have. And so the result of this recommendation is no net increase in staffing as a result of open enrollment. However, we will be talking about staffing in April as a board, and so I just want to stress that we may be coming for additional staff in April based on resident growth, but not as a result of this open enrollment recommendation. Okay? So if you look at the recommendation, we have a recommendation through 4K through high school. So Katie Heights is invaluable in preparing this report, and I really thank Katie for that. What we do is we look at our historical number of applications, we look at the current sections that we have and roll them forward, we look at how many move-in and move-outs we traditionally have, and then we look at, of course, our class size guidelines. And in looking at that, what we have determined is that in 4K and in kindergarten, we have room for 20 and 22 applications respectively, but first through third grade, our numbers are really tight. And we just don't feel that we have room at those levels to take open enrollment at this time. You know, we can certainly come back in June if our growth isn't as projected, but that's what we're projecting right now. We have a little bit of room in fourth grade because the class size guidelines go up in fourth grade, but again, really tight at roam corners in fifth and sixth grade. So we are recommending spaces in fifth. We want to reserve 2 spaces in sixth grade because sometimes we have siblings that, you know, maybe we have like a fourth and a sixth grade family that want to come in. And as you could understand, if one sibling gets in and one doesn't, then they typically don't want to come. And then again at middle school, you know, very tight there, but reserving a little bit of space. And then we have room at our high school. And then if you can see that she just provided more data throughout the report that I assume that you have read it, but I'm happy to take questions. And Dr. Bussler, do you have anything to add on the open enrollment report?
I would just add that we do not put this together in a vacuum. We spend quite a bit of time analyzing enrollment, and in particular looking at enrollments in grade levels that are high and are moving forward in the district, so that we don't get into that situation where we have some challenges by either not enough sections or too high of enrollment. I think many of you will remember a few years ago when we missed our projection in kindergarten, so we are super sensitive to those projections that we put together. Katie does a marvelous job. I forget how long she's been our registrar. I'll say probably over 10 years. And she really knows our parents well and does a good job putting together the information. So we've put a little tweak on some grade levels, and you'll notice, as Andy says, our water spigot for open enrollment is not as wide open as it was in years past. But we're happy to answer questions that you may have for us.
Anybody on this side have any questions or clarification? Barb?
I just have one question, and that is, if you have any sense, without collecting data, how many of our open enrollment families eventually become resident families? Or do they typically stay in an open enrollment status for most of their time here?
I don't have any data, but I would say the majority stay open enrollment status, but there are absolutely cases where people move in and then build homes and that type of thing. But I'd say the majority are probably stay in that open enrollment status.
And I can ask Katie if she tracks that data and email all of you as well.
Any other questions, Tim, Krista? Anything from you, Courtney, Jeff, or Dan? Any questions, Dan?
Have you noticed an increase in demand for open enrollment spaces, or do you anticipate that as we are closing the spigot? Or is there going to be more demand, do you think?
I'm not sure about the demand. I think less people will get in, obviously, because we're closing it. But I don't have a good sense of that. I think it's been fairly consistent over the last several years.
Katie and I did talk about that, and we really look at 4K in kindergarten, and that has been consistent. I would say K4, our numbers have been consistent. We get quite a few applications for kindergarten, as you can imagine, and then every level sort of decreases.
Do we turn a number of people away? In other words, we have, limited capacity. Do we end up turning people away?
In the past, we haven't turned as many away, I would say, except for children who need special education programming. Because we are, and I should have touched on that, so thank you for that question. We traditionally have not had as many spaces for children that need special education programming because our caseloads have been, where the level we feel comfortable with. So I would say if we turn families away, it's for that reason, because we want to make sure that we can meet students' needs.
Right. Yeah, you've got that.
Dan?
What's behind the closing of the spigot, as we say? Because I remember for years it was always, let's see how many of these candidates we can pull in because they bring dollars with them. And I realized that at some point there's expenditures, of course, that also have to go with them. And maybe it's come to a point where the expenditures have exceeded the dollars that would come in, and could be a space problem. Can you tell me what's behind that?
Your last comment was dead on. We're starting to run out of space.
So a follow-up on that question with Dan, it's correlated to that, is what's the budgetary impact on this? We had some augmentation of additional dollars by bringing in open enrollment students. So what does this do for our budget for the next year?
Well, we're still taking some students in. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it's probably in one of these charts how many seniors we have. So we have to bring some in because we'll be graduating some seniors, just so that we can have a neutral impact. Overall, open enrollment, I'm just going to do some quick math for you guys. Our net's around 200 kids because we have about 100 going out, 300 coming in. I'm just doing real quick. So at about $7,000 each student, you're talking approximately 1.4 million to the good as far as an impact. I tell folks that before we were growing, we were using open enrollment kind of to survive to some degree, so that we had some flexibility within our budget. Now that we're starting to see some growth, it's kind of less important to us, and then we're starting to have the space crunch, so that's why we've decided to kind of turn it back.
Yeah, I guess that was where I was headed, is that the available spaces that we have are being filled by resident students as opposed to open enroll, and that is a bigger benefit to us because we get a greater percentage of state dollars in, right?
Yeah, we're closer to $11,000 per student for residential, for residents compared to $7,000 for open enrolled.
So this puts us in a better situation, essentially, than relying on open enrollment.
Correct.
Mr. Raymond?
Just wanted to clarify something. The number of open enrollment spaces is new open enrollment spaces. It's not kids that were open enrolled last year aren't being turned away, correct?
That's correct. In our district, once you're open enrolled, then you can stay. So some districts make you apply at different grades or different buildings, and we're not one of those districts.
Mr. LeBrun?
And so just to expand on that, so if we bring some open enrollments in at 4th, 5th, 6th grade, we're committed. As long as, okay, even though our in-district grows beyond our current resources, and that may go back to what you talked about in April, where we may be doing that in some grades. Okay, thank you.
Any other board member have a question or comment about that? Okay, the administration recommendation is to approve the number of spaces available for open enrollment based upon the data in Table 1, so I need a motion to that effect. Mr. LeBrun with the motion, Mr. Raymond with the second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Wick, would you call the roll on this?
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Raymond? Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Feeney?
Yes.
Ms. Odorico? Yes. Ms. Flanagan? Yes. Mr. Zak?
Yes, that motion carries 7-0 to approve open enrollment available spaces for the 18-19 school year. Thanks, Gina and Andy and Katie, for your work in assembling that data. That takes us to agenda item D2, which is our 2017-2018 transportation conditions of payment. Mr. Weiland, you will present that on behalf of the administration?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
It kind of has been our practice over the last several years. We've been waiting to do the transportation conditions of employment until we know what our compensation increases are going to be. We use the 2% increase that all non-OEA members got this year as a number to forward to the transportation contractors, and they did accept that as a position. So we are bringing that. Oh, I'm sorry. Good point. We are forwarding that information to you for your consideration at this time. We did not change any language, and we do appreciate the contractors left their hourly rates and their mileage pay for extracurriculars at the same level as the last year. That helps with our athletic budget. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, Dan, Jeff, or Courtney, any questions on your side? Nope. Barb, Tim, or Krista? Nor do I. I need a motion to approve the district conditions of payment with our district transportation contractors as set forth in the materials that have been provided to the board that provide for a 2% increase in base changes and mileage changes. Have a motion to that effect? Ms. Feeney with the motion, is there a second? Ms. Odorico with the second. Any discussion? I know Jim Hagstrom's here. He's one of our district bus contractors. And Jim, thank you on behalf of the board and to all your contractors for the service you provide to our district and the manner in which we're able to negotiate through compensation issues. We really appreciate it. I was talking with some folks over at the state convention about our transportation arrangement, and it's unique, and they marveled at it and about how the fact that we've had families going back years. We have grandkids serving as bus contractors now, so it's an arrangement we'd like to keep for a long time. Thanks, Jim. Yep. Would you call the roll, Ms. Wick?
Ms. Feeney? Yes. Ms. Odorico? Yes. Ms. Flanagan? Yes. Mr. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Zak?
Yes, that motion carries 7-0, and we haven't approved 17-18 conditions of payment. That takes us to discussion items under Agenda E. Item E, committee reports, policy. Ms. Flanagan.
We met right before this meeting, and so we don't have anything coming forward for approval, but we will next meeting.
Visioning, Mr. Raymond.
We will be meeting next Wednesday, the 31st, at 7:30 in the morning, I assume at the district office. We will be receiving the final report from the Population Growth Task Force, and there's a good chance we'll be taking action on it at that meeting. So if you don't want to come in cold for the discussion at the first full board meeting in February, you might want to be at the VSC meeting next Wednesday.
And Jeff, as we discussed at our last meeting, the anticipation is that Visioning would receive that report and refer it to the board for our meeting on February 12th. And so one of the things that I'd ask that the Vision Committee do is discuss what that presentation looks like to the board. It's an opportunity to get the data that you've received, and that's been compiled before the public. So I would hope that we have some conversation about what that looks like, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. And if you're not ready to bring it forward at that time, if the Vision Committee has some issues with it, we're not locked in on the 12th, but we're kind of assuming that it will come forward.
Understood.
Okay, thanks. I think what I'm going to do now is jump out of the order a little bit, discussion items, something I wanted to do at the student report. Is Carolyn's here, right? Come on up. Yeah. Yeah, you come over by me. Carolyn served as our student rep for the first semester, and we greatly appreciated the time you spent in particular your assistance with us as we looked at the school day and school hours and your work with student council bringing that information. You were an absolute delight to have at our table. We hope maybe if you're inclined you can come the second semester and watch too, but I have a feeling you probably will pass on that. But we have a little sign of our appreciation for you. It's a little statue or medallion. It's a Make a Difference Award with your name on it in 2017. We greatly appreciate what you've done and the time you spent in coming to us and to our board meeting. I hope you learned a lot about how we function and what goes into the school district.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys letting me.
Yeah, great. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you this back. We should do a picture. Yeah, we should do a picture. We can do this. Great. And we'll get that posted on the website. So that That's right.
Awesome. My mom.
And if we don't see you before then, yeah, you get to keep that. Yeah. Okay. And if we don't see you before then, we'll see you on stage at graduation to give you your diploma. So thank you very much for being part of our board for the last 5 months. And you can go if you want to. Over. Okay. WASB State Convention Report. This is an information item. It's something that we've done the last several years because the district affords us the opportunity to go over to the state convention in Milwaukee, which ran last Wednesday through Friday. It's always a terrific occasion. We had 4 board members that were over there and a number of administrators, so I think it's beneficial to us to report out to the community what our activities were and what we thought was meaningful to us during that time. So first of all, I'm going to ask if there are any administrators want to come up here and just share anything about any seminars that you had. So I know Leslie, we'll let you go first.
Hello. It was a great 3 days, and I think the sessions that I found most valuable were the ones that were school districts presenting on things that they were doing specifically and things that they were doing specifically related to areas of interest for us. So I was able to attend a couple of sessions on evaluation and alignment of strategic plans to evaluation of data and alignment of strategic plans to data analysis and how to align professional development, budgetary needs, etc., to the plan itself. I attended a session on a local district that engaged in community engagement sessions related to growth and elementary boundary district changes. I found that to be very interesting. As we grow as a district, we'll need to be able to establish a plan to collect input from our community as to how that happens. And some of the districts that I learned more about who they are and what they do, and perhaps what we could be learning from them. I was not very aware in the past of some of the things happening in these districts because they're smaller, but they're more our size than I imagined. So I learned some great things about Howard Swamico and Muskegon, Norway, and I think it's called Luxembourg Casco. So these were districts that are similar to our size. One is perhaps just a little bit smaller, and they're doing very similar things to us. And so hearing how they were aligning their purpose and their actions, and all the way from the district to the school level, was helpful and a beneficial use of my time.
Thanks. Gina? Sounds like you got the convention cold too, because
Yes.
it was going around.
I did. So I apologize for that. But the one, I mean, I always take away a lot of things after convention, but the one thing that was really comforting to me, as I have a daughter going into 4K next year, is that you really see how thoughtful and wonderful our district is. And I don't, I just mean that in comparison, like the keynote speaker was talking about preparing students for jobs 10 years from now that we don't even know that they will exist, but we know the skills that students are going to need to have to maintain those jobs. And they're all things that this board has been talking about even before I got here, in terms of automation and innovation and the impact that that's going to have on the jobs of the future. And, blended learning and blending curriculums and not being in silos. And so I just really, and I mean this genuinely, that I just really appreciate the leadership of this board before me and now, because as a parent, to hear a keynote speaker talking to a room full of hundreds of educators and discussing all of the things that for us, at least for me, feel very, routine almost, and to be around other board members that, not to their fault, but just they're like, wow, like we haven't thought about this and we need to start talking about this. And so I just felt really grateful, as always, to be a part of this district and have a student starting here. So thank you.
Thanks. Andy, anything stick out for you?
Couple things. I guess the general session the first day, I thought the individuals' information regarding millennials and kind of how they look at things was extremely interesting. At the end, he started talking a little bit about how jobs are going to be changing and artificial intelligence and those types of things. And then the other thing is I had a larger session on Wednesday regarding a report that was put together by the National Conference of State Legislators called No Time to Lose, How to Build a World-Class Education System by State by state. It was basically a multi-country look at education and tried to identify things that at least 70% of the people who participated could agree upon. And they came up with 4 things, and I think we're going to start hearing more about it. They used information from the PISA study, which basically tries to measure skills that different countries have, not trying to regurgitate information or anything, but actually using and applying skills. And looking at those tests, they say we're a little bit behind, and there's some things that we need to do to kind of catch up a little bit as a nation. So look forward to that. Luther Olson was actually a member of that committee. For those of you that don't know, he's a pretty influential person at the state legislature right now, and he seems to have buy-in to this. So I think this might have some legs to do some things that I think us in the educational committee know we need to do, and so hopefully we'll be able to forward that agenda a little bit. So look for that in the future.
There were a couple of sessions that I thought were particularly good. I attended one on the missing piece of the puzzle for your strategic plan. And while it was presented by some smaller school districts, I think sometimes they're in a position where their innovation level has to be higher than our innovation level just by their very size and how they're competing for open enrollment students, how they're engaged with their community so students don't leave their district on open enrollment, and that was valuable to me. One that I haven't caught up with Gina on yet, it was 2 large districts, the Chippewa Falls and Oconomowoc area, both over 5,000 students, and they had a presentation on strategies that improve employee retention. The sort of good news piece is we're already doing everything that we heard. The bad news piece is I was looking for the holy grail, so to speak, and I didn't find it. But it is good and reaffirming to hear that districts that are peers to us are working on very similar things. And then one that I missed, but I sent out an email today. A dear friend of mine, she and I worked together in the Sun Prairie School District a number of years ago, and I love the title of this. It's a student achievement one. It's called Should We Flip, Bend, Personalize, or Respond to It? What Matters in Teaching to Improve Learning? She works with the Heartland Lakeside School District. She's an assistant superintendent in the Heartland Lakeside School District in Waukesha County. So I'm really interested in seeing her PowerPoint on that. I know their district has been a leader with personalized learning and very involved in the CISA One Institute. But there was a competing excellent presentation at the exact same time, and that's why I missed her presentation.
Erica, anything that you want to come up and talk? Because you were bopping to all kinds of sessions, and having talked to you, I know you enjoyed a lot of them.
Well, this was my first time at the convention, so I really had a nice time. And most of the sessions I went to had to do with the communications function. And it's a really new function for a lot of districts. Only about 20% of the districts in Wisconsin have this. And they were the ones who spoke have had the position for about 4 or 5 years. So it was really interesting to hear that the learnings that they had and some of the struggles they had in starting up and lessons learned. So I made a lot of really good contacts. Some are close by, so people that I'll be able to talk with as we're starting up our function. But they're all different. I mean, everyone structures theirs differently depending on the needs of their district. So I'm looking forward to continuing to talk with those folks and apply those learnings.
I know. There we go. I know talking with you, it's just, if you haven't been before there, it's a pretty big deal. It's a big conference with a lot of folks there, and squeezed into 3 days. It's a pretty impressive event that WASB puts on. So I'm glad you were able to make it and make those connections there. Great. Barb?
There are a couple things that stood out for me. One was the presentation that Andy referred to, where the presenter talked about millennials, and he works around the world. And what was so interesting to me and hopeful is how he is working with youth around the world that come from many different backgrounds, particularly that come from different religious backgrounds, and learning how to break down barriers between kids at very young ages, so they find out that they're much more like each other than they are different. And I thought that was just an encouraging thing in our world today. I also went to a presentation the title was about mindfulness, but the speaker did a great job talking about mindfulness techniques that he uses, including he brought in some of his equipment. And it was, to me, really interesting, and it's just exciting to see how schools are innovating. And although he worked particularly with special ed students, some of the things he's doing work real well to help all students focus and deal with their internal anxieties or whatever is going on with them at the moment. So it was a great presentation.
John or Candace, I missed you as we swept through. Anything you'd like to add? Anything in particular? Okay. Candace, anything? Yeah, that's good. It was good. It was a little bit more detailed and day-to-day oriented for Candace and I went to the same one, but it had a lot of ideas about formats that you can do for evaluation. So I'm glad you hooked up with them because they're pretty knowledgeable about what they're doing. So good. Krista.
I thought there were a couple really good sessions. One I just took some notes on, and it was by School Perceptions, who's a firm in Wisconsin who works with a lot of school districts in terms of surveys, and they really focused on there's a difference between satisfaction and engagement, and they had a really cool visual about of all your employees or any organization, 30% of your staff is engaged, 52% is disengaged, and then 18% is actively disengaged. And they had a really cool graphic that was actually a boat. And so the engaged are your paddlers, the 52% that's disengaged are your passengers, and then your boat sinkers were the 18%. So I thought that was a really kind of an interesting way to present that. But a couple other things that I found really applicable, and I think we do a good job in our school district, that the number one way to boost staff engagement is trust in management, and that engagement doubles when employees are proud of their organization. So I think it really speaks to some of the things that we're looking at that we do in our organization in terms of make a difference, or now with Erica on board, telling more stories about the things that we're doing really well and what our staff is doing really well. So I thought that was very interesting. And then the other one that I went to was 20 strategies for community engagement. And so they had some really good ideas about how it was Elmbrook School District, which is Elm Grove and Brookfield, which is really kind of an interesting school district, but they're doing a lot of really good things. And so there were just some ideas in terms of how teachers seek feedback from parents, and some parent survey questions that go out that they ask each parent, who would you like to recognize or thank in the district, which I think is a very interesting question when you're surveying parents about their perceptions of the school district. So some really neat things, but I did think it was a really good conference, and Steve and Brian did an excellent job on their presentation, and it was interesting to listen to them present about our school district and then watch people in the audience. A lot of people were taking furious notes, and we actually had some people come up and talk to Jeff and I afterward, a new school board member from Richland Center who was kind of deer in the headlights about, where do I go? Oh my gosh, you guys are doing all these really cool things. So that was a really neat thing to see. So good job.
Thanks. Yeah, we presented, Brian and I, Friday morning. It wasn't the best time in the world, nor the most optimal room where we got placed, but we still had a full room and really engaged audience. Leslie, thank you for working with us and putting together the PowerPoint, and the administrative team for being there to support us as we talked. It went really well. It's really good that we get to go over there and share our story. Couple of things on the conference. Thanks to the Oregon School District for sending us there. A large portion of districts around the state send their boards there, and it was not unusual to see in the morning at our hotel boards meeting for breakfast and lunch, and it's good team building, and I know those of us who were there had good interaction. The theme that I noted this year, in past years there was a lot of talk about personalized learning and also about teacher compensation plans. This year there were more sessions on communication, I thought, and outreach. And so that was really good at just kind of seeing where districts are out, is making sure that they're communicating with their constituents. So I found that to be an interesting theme. The one session that really stood out to me was a faculty member at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. I think, Jeff, you got those materials or had them sent to you, talking about board leadership and district leadership governance and how that impacts student achievement. And it was really good. He had data. He's done surveys and looked at data about student achievement and done surveys in terms of the leadership practices. And there's a correlation between good governance and good leadership and student achievement over a period of time, which was really interesting. I mean, that's a simplified version of his message, but one of his quotes was, "Governance creates the environment in which change can occur." I thought that was important because we've really worked for that as a board, is to create that environment. he did have a quote. He said, "In the first place, God made idiots. This was for practice. Then He made school boards." So I wasn't quite sure where. Wasn't quite sure where on the pecking order he puts us. It seemed to be pretty low, but that was what he led with. But then he went into, yeah. But then he went on to affirm kind of what. Yeah. Well, he got a laugh, so he got there. But the theme was board alignment is reflected in higher achievement on an indirect basis. So that was a really interesting session to go to.
Steve, that was Professor Ford.
Yep. That was Ford.
He's written a number of articles in the Wisconsin School News. I think everyone gets Wisconsin School News, so watch for that. He usually references, it's an article based on some of his research, so they're usually very good to read, and he is an interesting personality.
I like Bill Daggett's talk. It's something we've heard before for a number of years over there. I don't get tired of hearing that. In talking with some of us afterwards, I wish we would get to the how and have some particulars with the how on stuff. But having worked through with our leadership teams with Jim Rickabaugh and getting there, at each of the sessions we had, I wrote down the question is, why do we need to change? Well, we're doing really well as a district, and all of our performance metrics show that we're doing really well, both internally and compared to other districts. And so when we talk about change, why do we need to change? And that's been sort of our theory back when we wrote a paper a long time ago in 2007 on going forward. And that continues to be the theme. When he threw out the figure that 65% of the jobs, current jobs, are going to be gone in 7 years, and they're going to be in new forms. And we have to adapt to that. Courtney.
I just heard an NPR report as I was driving over here that currently 1/5 of the working population in the United States is a sole proprietor, a contractor, and by 2027 it will be 50% of the working economy, which means that 50% of people will be in charge of their own professional life. So, I mean, just that's not a specific job, but just that thought of training people in school now to become self-motivated and self-led is huge, if that's true.
And that was a point he made too, was the change in that dynamic from the big corporations. He had, one slide that showed what were the 5 largest companies 10 years ago or 5 years ago, what they are now and what they'll be in the future. And one of the points he made was that we're moving away from more of the big organizations because they're not flexible enough to move like this. So it was a theme that we've heard before, but I think we just need to keep coming back to it, so that we don't get complacent in what we're doing. The how things, the question that we're wrestling with, and that's why we've got the visioning committee and our leadership teams working with Dr. Rickabaugh in planning out that change process. The other thing that he mentioned was the mental health issues amongst our youth, and highlighted that significantly. And the statistic he gave was that the number one leading cause of death of individuals under the age of 25 in this country is suicide. And he says that that's the worst outcome of those with mental illness. And so if you figure that that's the leading cause, those who are impacted performance-wise in other areas is much greater. And it highlights the need for schools to continue to be involved proactively relative to mental health. And we got that report last week, or at our last meeting, about what we're doing as a district and what we're going to need to do going forward. It was you could hear the air go out of the room when he gave that statistic. So he was really good. The last thing I want to add about the convention was it was a great chance to connect with not only folks from our district who were there, but with other board members to see them in action. I got a chance to talk with folks from Sun Prairie, Stoughton, Middleton, and Monona Grove and see what they're doing. We're going to get together informally with our informal Dane County Consortium next month and just talk without an agenda about what's going on. So keep apprised of that. So I'll send out an invite. We're going to get together and talk about local issues. But we had a good chance to talk. A lot of people are reevaluating compensation plans. And a lot of folks are talking about growth in Dane County and how they're going to deal with that, because we're not the only ones that are getting big reports out. And I saw a report in the paper a couple weeks ago that Dane County in the next 20 years is going to grow, 20% or something like that. We're one of the top 2 counties for growth in the next 20 years in the state of Wisconsin. So other districts in Dane County are looking at the same thing. So it was a really good conference again this year. Anybody have anything else they'd like to share about the conference? Okay. That takes us to superintendent's report. Brian.
This last week, Jim and several of his teachers put together our first ever senior seminar capstone project. I had the opportunity, and I know several board members had the opportunity, to participate as interviewers, and I had 2 just terrific young people that walked through their portfolios. And while this was a pilot, I think our goal is to continue to roll this out and increase participation every year. So if you were one of those that participated this year, I'm guessing you had a really good experience. And if not, do your best to fit it on your calendar next year, because you get to see our high school age students. And whenever we can get individuals outside of school into school to see our kids, they always walk away being super impressed and super amazed at the youth in America. So that's a big positive for us. A second positive, the 34th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Youth Recognition Breakfast Program was held on Sunday, January 14th. I wish I had a copy for everyone, but I don't. The 2-paged or tabbed pages include our Oregon Middle School students and our Oregon High School students that were recognized at this event. It's always held at Edgewood High School, and it's really a terrific breakfast event recognizing a tremendous group of kids in the greater Dane County community. Another special recognition, this is Wisconsin School Crossing Guard Week, and I'd like to share with you the names of our crossing guards. Bessie Woodward, she's at Janesville Street and Elm Street. Elaine Monte is at North Main and Grove. Carolyn Cross is at Prairie View and Soden Drive. Betty Cleaver is at North Main and East Lincoln. Willie McCarville is at North Oak and Nygaard. You might not know this, but she has been one of our crossing guards since 1998. A few years, I always stop and visit with her sometime during the year, and I love my conversations with her. And she said to me, and this is a quote, if she's watching she will smile, "Hey, you're the boss. Can't you get me one of those fancy little cards so I can walk through Netherwood or Prairie View and get to my area a little faster?" If you know Mrs. McCarville, she lives right behind the district office, actually right outside of John Tanner's window. And she is just a delightful person. So we made sure, and she has an official card so she can come through when it's raining or when the weather's not so great. Mark Kading is at Soden and East Lincoln, and then you'll recognize this name, Jim Snow. He's been at RCI since 2001, so going on 17 years, and one of our subs is Denise Schomer. Denise works in our food service program at Prairie View Elementary School. My fourth item, over the weekend, we hosted the Badger Challenge Boys Basketball event, and a special thanks to Mike and our parents and our Oregon Sports Booster Club to make that happen. If you're not familiar with it, we held a very similar event to this with the volleyball program this fall. That means the North teams play the South teams based on where you are in the standings, and you play one game, and it gives an opportunity to bring all Badger Conference basketball or volleyball, and they do it in golf as well, athletes together for a day to celebrate their sport. So I received a number of emails or texts thanking us for what a marvelous facility we have, and the texts or emails always finished with, make sure you say that publicly, because it's so hard to get facilities approved for public schools. So we're the envy of a few districts. My fifth item, the Oregon Middle School Madrigal Dinners on February 9th and 10th. And if you haven't been to one of those events, you get it on your calendar this year or next year. Shannon, I believe the special featured entree is boar's head at the Madrigal event. It actually tastes more like ham to me than it does boar's head, but to see the kids engaged in that is really a lot of fun. And to my right is a parent that used to be a potato peeler, if I remember him telling me this from years past.
I didn't even get that good a job. I was a dishwasher. So
I knew it was something super important, but again,
it's a really cool event. Yeah.
a great example of those events don't happen in our community without parents pitching in and making it happen. On January 15th, we had our Professional Development Day, and Leslie worked with the OEA. I put it in this last week's update, we had over 31 different workshop sectionals during that day, and it has become a really important professional development day, and you will like this. It's our teachers and our staff teaching one another. So we get to serve as the experts, sharing information with each other. This morning I opened up an email from Mary Pryor. Mary's our band teacher, and she sent me this heartwarming email about how her students love to see administrators at their concert. So I'm going to go tomorrow night, and if any of you have an opportunity to go, it's going to be at the PAC here at the high school. I thought, that's an effective technique. Super effective. Then coming up on January 30th is our district spelling bee, and it's hosted at the middle school. Shannon, I don't know exactly the time. That's an after-school event, the spelling bee, or is that during the day? It's during the school day. So we will find the greatest spellers in the Oregon School District. And then an item that Krista mentioned, I think I just have these for board members. So administrators, I didn't bring enough along for everyone. When we talk about retention and recognizing and honoring the work of our colleagues, whoops, here's the last one. One more. This is something we've been doing for a number of years, and it's our 2016-17 Service Awards report. We recognize these individuals or our colleagues at a faculty meeting. Years ago, we used to recognize them at the January in-service, but we've traded out getting together as a big team on the January in-service day for professional development time. That's your copy, so you can keep it. I'm just going to point out 4 of our faculty and staff members. First, our 30-year recipient is Mary Kay Gillespie. I know many of you know Mary Kay. She's a second grade teacher at Brooklyn Elementary School, super involved in our gardening project and just involved in lots and lots of things at Brooklyn Elementary School. Next, we go to our 35-year recipients, and we have 2. First, Kay Bleefernick. Kay is a Oregon graduate, too, and a hired back in 1982. She's a high school special education teacher. Our second 35-year recipient is Bernie Schnabel. Bernie is at the middle school, and she works in our food service program. And our final recipient for 40 years of service in the Oregon School District, I'm guessing you'll know this name, Bob Eveland, one of our science teachers, currently a 7th grade science teacher at Oregon Middle School. One of the nice things about this booklet that you have in front of you, you'll notice some of the stories and comments that people make about their colleagues. And if you're having a bad day, pick this book up. You'll read great stories about great people, and we recognize individuals from 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40. Occasionally we have a little higher than 40. But that's this year's class, and we provide that to you for your background reading and enjoyment. That concludes my reports tonight, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions of Brian? All right, future agenda. It's our February 12th meeting. Policy will probably have something. Is that the naming rights, 16 and 2 things? Okay, you work with Janie on getting both of those on the agenda. And then we'll get a state budget report information items. But the big item that night will be an anticipated report on the Student Growth and Population Task Force. That's coming forth. This will be one of the most significant things that we're going to do as a board, in a while. And we've got lots of data and lots of options to review. So this next couple months are going to be really important for us. So we've been working a little bit behind the scenes on a lot of big initiatives, and those are starting to come forward in the public eye and will require some hard choices by us. So that's the future on that. If anyone has any additional items that they'd like placed on the agenda, let Brian, Janie, or me know. Checkout, Courtney. Nothing tonight. Jeff?
Just one quick comment, and it goes back to the WASB convention last week. Krista mentioned that we had a brief conversation with another board member from a rural district, and she was in her first year and just trying to keep her head above water. But, she sat and listened to your presentation about all the wonderful things that have taken place here over the last few years, like all the construction and the teacher compensation plan and the wonderful support that we have from the community. And she was, as Krista mentioned, she was impressed with what we're doing. But it was noteworthy when she told us about the things on her plate as a board member in a rural district. Her big things are whether or not to keep a school open, things like that. So I just thought it was interesting that we should try to be grateful for what a fine situation we have here in Oregon.
Thank you. Dan? Nothing? Barb? Tim?
I didn't get a chance to go to the convention. I had a change in my plans Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but I had some very interesting interactions over the last 3 days, and it was a great illustration of how the world is changing. I met a gentleman who his career, he is 23 years old, and his career is underwater welding. And I asked him how on earth did he get to a career at 23 in underwater welding. And he said that his high school tech teacher took him under his wing. And even though it wasn't a formal program at his high school, it inspired him enough to follow that track to post-high school education. And he is making very good money. Everybody read, I'm sure, the article either yesterday or the day before Amazon opened their first cashier-less retail store. And so people just walk in, it scans your phone, you grab whatever you want, you walk back out through the door, and it charges you. And that is going to change life for lots of high school students, for one thing, and lots of people who depended on the retail industry as a career. And so I thought that was interesting. Lastly, I spoke with one of those rural students who was so excited about his construction experience. And so I couldn't wait to hear about it because we have a great construction program here. And they were excited to add yard barns to their construction class this year. And I couldn't help but reflect on the homes that we are going to be building, that we have been building for years, and that we are going to build in the next 3 years due to some land purchases that we made just in the last several months. And so we are, as you mentioned, Jeff, so far ahead. We are so blessed to be able to give our kids the experiences that they are getting in the Oregon School District, because there are lots of other kids who aren't getting the experiences our kids are, and the world is changing quickly. And so it was an interesting weekend in the very near future for me. So that's it.
Krista?
I just wanted to comment briefly. I was one of the board members that went to the capstone interviews last week, and I am continually impressed by I had 2 students that I met with about how confident they are and what great communicators they are. They are just, it continues to impress me that at 18 years of age, they're confident in themselves and they can communicate a thought. And one of the end questions we asked was, thinking back, kindergarten through 12th grade, what are some of the best experiences, or how would you kind of evaluate your education? And both of them really talked about the variety of experiences and opportunities, and then also the teaching staff and the variety of teaching and learning methods that they were exposed to. And then for both of them, could we improve upon? And both indicated they would really like the opportunity to be exposed to more diverse people and diversity of thought. So I thought that was interesting.
Thanks. We had a lot of individual conversations over in Milwaukee about diversity and affordable housing in the Oregon School District, and I think we're going to continue those conversations as a board and what role we can play in that, because it is a need for our students to become more exposed to diversity of people and cultures, but also thought. I'll echo the comments on the capstone project. When you go back a number of years with board work and with the administrators, we've always looked forward to the day when graduation is culminated by some form of dialogue with peers and parents and community members, and whether it be in the form of a project or a portfolio review. And to see this now starting to come out, it was an early form of it. It's a first step in this, but it was really a terrific experience. I agree. It just the poise that individuals have in communicating with someone that they hadn't talked with before and sharing what they've done and what their dreams are. It was really a good experience. It tells us a lot about our district going through that, and I'm looking forward to seeing that program grow and develop. We've talked about not only numbers-wise, but moving that towards a lot earlier conversation in a student's career and continuing throughout till graduation. That would be really good. I'm looking forward to that. They've got their next class started this week, and so they'll be doing the same type of interviews at the end of the semester. So I look forward to doing that. I'd do more, but we were in the convention because it was really good experience to do that. So, and we are really fortunate in this district that we're able to talk about doing those things as opposed to being limited budgetarily right now and being able to dream. So we got a really important meeting next time in February to get that dream going on. When we were talking about increasing our district by 50% in size and talking about how we're going to configure schools, that's going to be a big impact. So the next couple months, I'm really looking forward to working hard with you guys and making some really good decisions on behalf of the future of the district. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. I think everybody wants to stay and talk some more. I don't think so. Kristen with the motion, Tim with the second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:34. Thanks, everyone.